And how old are you?
I am legal.
You're legal?
Yep.
So what, 18? I'm gonna bend down. I'm gonna go low, and you're gonna use me. Now put your rifle on me, boy. Come on. Get into me. Come on.
Okay, ma'am.
Will you fucking get it deep?
My first time.
God. Oh.
I'm basically interested as foot soldiers. Remember this, okay? Remember this. Then the interview the Ukrainian commander called Andriy. He said DPRK forces operate in groups of 50 soldiers divided into squads of 5 to 8 men. This is something we could visually confirm in the previous videos. He also said that whenever soldiers were wounded, the attack force did not retreat. Instead, they waited for replacements and then carried on the assault. He also said that once North Koreans secure a position, they don't start digging in to prepare its defense. They hand it over to Russian reinforcements coming from the rear, and then retreat to prepare for the next attack. So this is exactly what we can expect from special forces carrying out surgical strikes. Shortly after came reports of another combat action involving the DPRK, once again in Plehava, south of Suja. There was reported that a 100-strong Ukrainian garrison initially held out against two waves of around 150 North Koreans, once again followed by the morbid filming of enemy fatalities. Up close, the drone operators seem to have been really looking for these guys because we could only see 5 enemy fatalities. Surprise, surprise, in some drone footage from this sector, only a couple dozen riflemen could be seen pushing into a wooded area. It seems multiple DPRK units went on the attack during that time because on that same day, another detachment took Ukrainian positions by storm east of Malaya Lorknia. In the video, we can see about 3 squads running across open terrain. So once again, we face a platoon-sized unit of about 30 men. They're then struck by artillery, leaving about a dozen of their comrades behind. And on the map, we can see that the front line didn't change, so the attack was a failure. After that, FPV drones chased down the survivors and played with their targets by following them around trees.
Они типа очень маневренные и очень быстрые. Они очень быстро бегают, перемещаются, ну, их сложно словить, тем более дрон.
As part of the aftermath of this combat action, the following video shows a North Korean soldier telling a Chechen fighter about his recent encounter with drones. Using basic Russian but mostly hand signs and sounds, he explains how he shot down one of the 4 drones flying overhead. And that's something we could witness in many of these drone strikes. We could see DPRK infantrymen firing at the drones. There was also this video of wounded North Korean soldiers in a hospital in the Kursk region after recent heavy fighting. But I thought they abandoned their own wounded. I don't understand. Some people claim over 100 DPRK personnel was in that hospital, although I could only visually confirm it doesn't. The mainstream media took this opportunity to spin this entire story around. We went from 100 wounded to 100 KIA. Each new article topped up the previous one. Overall, I estimated that no more than 500 North Korean soldiers, or about a battalion, participated in this series of attacks around the Suja salient. In the end, we have to return to what Andriy Chernak, the representative of the main intelligence directorate, said in early December. We know that 2,000 North Korean servicemen have been sent to the Marine Corps Brigade and the Airborne Division. That's essentially a regiment, or about 30 rifle platoons. What about the other 10,000 North Koreans? What were they doing? During this time, UK needed a solid proof of North Korea's involvement in the war, most likely to gain sympathy from the West. The first claim of a captured North Korean soldier came in late December, but it was quickly debunked as a picture from 2020. 2022. So Ukraine literally went on the hunt for North Korean prisoners. That's how operators from Ukraine's 73rd Marine Special Operations Unit ambushed a North Korean squad and proceeded to collect data on enemy personnel. They even found a diary on one of the soldiers. Here are some samples of some of its entries. When you want to wish your friend a happy birthday, but instead of a party, you're holding an AK in a trench far from home, and the candles are replaced with 5.56 Ukrainian rounds. He also said the Russians tried to pass them as ethnic Tuvans, one of the other indigenous populations of Siberia like Buryats and the Yakuts. You can also see the impact drones had on this soldier and the tactics they used to counter them. Literally one guy runs as a bait, and the two others shoot at it. Then these Ukrainian operators also cut some pieces of hair and took some cotton swabs for DNA testing to prove to everyone that they're indeed North Koreans. Imagine if the DNA results come back as Tuvan. Turns out Russia just trolled everyone, and they made their own Asian recruits pass as North Koreans. During this hunt, Ukrainian Spec Ops team also found documents on a North Korean officer. One of these documents was called Combat Experience and Lessons of the 94th Brigade. This is a Special Forces Brigade in the DPRK. The document emphasized the importance of breaking teams into smaller 2-3 member units to minimize combat losses from drone attacks and artillery fire. They're learning fast, but there was also something else. Due to a lack of knowledge of enemy tactics, when soldiers couldn't locate the enemy, some units and companies ran along roads in large numbers, and as a result, enemy forces hidden in buildings and basements launched attacks on the exposed flanks and rear, causing significant casualties. That could explain the video we analyzed from December, where we see North Korean infantrymen attacking column formation out in the open. Overall, that officer's document was very sensible, such as no combat action should proceed without reconnaissance. Our primary mission is concealment. Portable jamming should be used for electronic warfare and so on. Among other items found on this officer's what appears to be a family portrait taken just before his departure. The message on it reads, "This will be a beautiful memory. August 15th, 2024, and the picture at the bottom right is labeled with my sister." A couple days later, around the 11th of January, Special Forces operators from Ukraine's 84th Tactical Group ambushed another TPRK detachment. This time they noticed that one of the North Korean soldiers was wounded. He had shrapnel in his legs and had lost consciousness. When the operators approached him, he woke up and tried to pull the pin of a grenade. But luckily for him and for everyone around, he did not succeed. The 5-man SSO team then proceeded to evacuate the POW and provide him with first aid. Around the same time, Ukrainian paratroopers managed to capture another of Kim Jong-un's soldiers. So that's how Ukraine managed to capture 2 North Korean soldiers. The first one was called Ri, and he was 26 years old. As you can see, he had a fractured jaw. In a lengthy interview, he explained his story. Ri first joined combat on the 5th of January. He explained how his assault detachment relied on Russian artillery support, but they fired beyond the target, and he said that led to unnecessary casualties among North Korean troops. During the following firefight, Ri got hit by multiple bullets, and he lost consciousness. When he woke up, he tried to find his way back. Luckily, he ran into a group of North Korean soldiers that bandaged him. But that's when they got ambushed by Baba Yaga bomber drone. It pinned down the entire group, and moments later, Ukrainian soldiers showed up aboard armored vehicles. Ri said there were 6 of us, and all 5 of them died. Ri then tried to walk back to friendly lines, but this time he got lost, and that's essentially how he got captured. The second North Korean soldier that was captured is 21-year-old Peg. He was injured at the leg. His unit initially trained for raids and sabotage missions in South Korea. Both of these prisoners entered the military at 17 years old, and both of them lived in the capital, Pyongyang, showing that they were part of a privileged class. They said that they arrived in Russia by train in November 2024, and not by ship like everyone was talking about in the media. And they were told that they would just stay in Russia for training. By mid-January, we can believe North Korean forces largely abandoned their large-scale infantry assaults, as they probably noticed they were both wasteful and unsustainable. Thus, it seems they shifted to smaller infiltration missions. And then 2 weeks later, on the 30th of January, poof, abracadabra, magic, North Korean troops no longer seen on front lines fighting Ukraine. Nearly 10,000 soldiers, an entire division gone, as if they were never there in the first place. What was the explanation? Kiev claimed at the end of January that the North Korean troops had been withdrawn due to heavy losses. Always the same story. Always the same story. But still, it was weird. The North Koreans just appeared and then they were gone. Hear me out. Maybe, just maybe, because the special forces shifted to more covert operations, which is actually what they were trained for. By late March 2025, South Korean intelligence believed North Korea sent 3,000 more soldiers to fight in Ukraine. It could be an entire fresh and new brigade that is about to reach the front line. Nope. No questions asked, it's because of heavy losses. Ukraine reports claim that 300 North Koreans had been KIA and another 2,700 were wounded. And while the North Koreans were gone from the battlefield, their casualty numbers still increased. At the end of April, Reuters reported that 600 North Koreans had been KIA and another 4,100 wounded.
Shake and win millions of prizes with the AliExpress $1 challenge.
And another 4,100 wounded. I fear that they're just making shit up. We can safely divide that number by 3 and we could be close to reality. Even then, the few reported combat actions actually involving North Koreans simply don't match such high casualty rates. So let's summarize North Korea's involvement in the Ukraine war up until that point. We know that the involvement of the 92nd and 94th Brigades of the DPRK Special Forces means that the total strength of the contingent is estimated at about 2,500 men, something that had also been confirmed by prisoner of war Reed. We also know they were attached to the Russian 22nd Motorized Rifle Regiment, the 810th Marine Brigade, as well as the 11th Airborne Brigade. However, what nobody talks about is how the North Korean Expeditionary Corps did not only consist of simple riflemen. While the special forces were assaulting Ukrainian positions, this footage was released of a Ukrainian drone strike against a Bullseye 4 anti-tank missile system near Malaya Lognia. Another one was also struck the month before. Each one of these long-range ATGMs are crewed by 3 people. The Ukrainians also spotted a North Korean analog for the Tor air defense missile system, built on a wheeled base with a trailer. We can estimate 4 crew per short-range air defense system. How many such vehicles accompanied the DPRK's Expeditionary Corps? We could be looking at hundreds of personnel to operate them. However, North Korea's most substantial help to Russia came in the form of artillery. And it just makes sense. Why take time to train Russian soldiers to operate these foreign artillery pieces when you can directly import trained crews? It also solves many of the language problems. You only need translators to transfer orders from Russian artillery brigades to the batteries down below. It was reported that the only thing the Russians needed to train the North Koreans for was on how to operate FPV and reconnaissance drones. And according to some sources I talked to, the North Korean artillery crews had been in Kursk Oblast since August 2024. Same as for the crews inside the Bullseye ATGMs. In early January, some Russian unit published this close-up of a North Korean Koksan self-propelled howitzer. But notice, they don't film the crews, it's just standing there. Such artillery pieces kept pouring into Russia. Actually, not just artillery units, but also tons of ammunition, like these North Korean 122mm OF-472 shells for this T-74 cannon, or even these 152mm rounds supplied to a Russian artillery crew. And I'm not done! The Russians also received 300mm KN-09 MRLS that can strike 200 kilometers into enemy lines. Budanov, the chief of Ukraine's main Directorate of Intelligence, said Russia received a total of 120 units of artillery and an additional 120 units of MRLS. 240! And there are hints that these howitzers are actually operated by North Korean crews. First of all, because we have no footage of Russian artillery crews using them, but there was also this story from mid-March. The Ukrainians published footage of a precision-guided cluster munition strike on 370mm M1989 Koksan self-propelled howitzers at once. The reports claimed that because this artillery battery had such a long range, the crew didn't bother camouflaging their installations. They didn't even add any nets. And on top of that, they parked in an open clearing where their tracks were visible. I doubt Russian artillery crews would make such a mistake 4 years into the war. Each of these 170mm Coxsat self-propelled howitzers need at least 6 personnel to be operated, so a total of 720 artillerymen. Same thing for the 240mm MRLS. In that case, we could already stand at 1,500 people just to operate the artillery units, plus an equal number for command and control, logistics, and maintenance. We could stand at about 3,000 North Koreans just to take care of the artillery. To me, the only way to make sense of multiple thousands of North Korean soldiers in Russia is if there's more than just infantry. We simply don't have enough reports and visual confirmation that an entire division was active on the battlefield. Of course, this is just speculation, but in total we could be looking at 2,500 infantrymen from the special forces, plus a couple hundreds of men operating various armored vehicles. To that we can add nearly 3,000 personnel to take care of the artillery component. In that case, we can believe the DPRK's expeditionary corps consisted of at least 6,000 men. The only component missing would be North Korean tank crews. Maybe it's too complicated to coordinate combined arms attacks involving armored vehicles if the crews don't understand Russian. I mean, even when they speak Russian, it often turns into a shit show. On the 11th of February, Seoul said, "More North Korean weapons and troops coming to Russia. Boys, we're good for round 2. Honestly, this can only mean one thing. For Russia and North Korea, this experiment was a success. What can we expect from now on? Well, Ukrainian special forces continue picking off isolated North Korean squads, multiplying the casualties they have inflicted by a ratio of 5. But very soon, we may see well-equipped North Korean operators like these ones become the hunters. On the 24th of April, Russia showed its willingness to negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine by launching a KN-23 ballistic missile right on Kyiv. Vladimir, stop! 3 days later, on the 27th of April, Gerasimov, the chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces, publicly mentioned the heroism of North Korean troops during the Battle of Kursk. Following this announcement, Kim Jong-un announced North Korea's decision to enter the conflict based on Article 4 of the North Korea-Russia Treaty. Now that it was all official, multiple videos were released featuring DPRK military personnel at various Russian training grounds. In the following footage, we can see them train on how to administer first aid, how to handle anti-tank weapons to deal with enemy armored vehicles, and most importantly, how to destroy enemy drones. Obviously, they also practice assault tactics in urban areas, all the while coordinating combat actions with drones. And because this is the Ukraine war, they also learned how to navigate and clear trench networks. This Russian instructor revealed that the average age of soldiers from North Korea is 23 to 27 years old, and that they arrived already in excellent physical shape. As you can see, a new brotherhood was born. And now we're entering uncharted territory. At last, the big question is, where is the Russian Army Command going to deploy its North Korean soldiers? Some of them were spotted inside a truck somewhere in Russia. Although the location was not disclosed, the symbol on the truck gives us an important clue. It's a symbol of the Russian grouping operating in Belgorod Oblast, north of Kharkiv. In the following weeks, we could see the DPRK's Expeditionary Corps see combat in Kharkiv Oblast, in sectors like Vovchansk and Liptsi. And why not, we could also possibly witness North Korean armored attacks, involving IFVs, but also tanks. Lots of tanks. That's all I have for you today. Let me know in the comment section below what you thought of my analysis. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to support my work, make sure to check centuries, strange figures have been seen in the English countryside. They walk on two legs, but are not human. Their heads are too large and their limbs too long, their eyes reflecting in the darkness like an animal. People have reported these creatures for generations, long before the term werewolf became common. The stories shift over time, but the core remains the same. Something is out there, something that shouldn't exist. These are not just old legends. In Yorkshire, villagers once feared a wolf-headed beast that roamed the roads near Flixton. In Northumberland, witnesses in the 1970s claimed they saw a half-man, half-wolf creature after disturbing ancient artifacts. In Cannock Chase, reports continue to this day of a muscular, bipedal wolf seen between the trees. In Hull, locals spoke of Old Stinker, a werewolf-like entity said to haunt the Yorkshire wolds. The werewolf, or something like it, has always had a place in England's history, whether it was described as a cursed being, a revenant, or simply something unnamed. It keeps returning in different forms. There was a time when wolves roamed freely across Britain, but their fate was sealed by the English crown. King Edgar began a brutal campaign to exterminate wolves, offering bounties and demanding wolf skins as tribute from his Welsh subjects. And by the reign of Henry VII, wolves had been completely wiped out in England, leaving only whispers of their existence. And by the 1700s, wolves were extinct across the entire British Isles. Yet, even as real wolves vanished from the land, stories of something else continued. The first recorded mention of werewolves in England doesn't come from folklore or peasant superstition. It actually comes from a respected 13th century scholar. Gervase of Tilbury was an English cleric, historian, and court official. He spent much of his life in Europe, serving as a trusted advisor to Emperor Otto IV of the Holy Roman Empire. He wasn't just a writer. He was a man who moved in powerful circles, collecting knowledge from across the known world. His best-known work, Otia Imperialia, was written around 1211 as a gift for Otto IV. It was meant to entertain and educate, blending history, law, and strange phenomena that he believed the emperor would find fascinating. Some of them are stories that he gathered, others are framed as first-hand observations, and among them, in a book filled with documented supernatural encounters, is a single line that stands out. We have often seen men change into wolves in England. This wasn't framed as a fairy tale. It wasn't a rumour whispered by frightened villagers. It was presented as something that had happened. Gervase of Tilbury wrote his account of werewolves in the early 13th century, a time when wolves still roamed parts of England. Unlike today, when the species is long extinct in Britain, medieval people lived with the very real presence of wolves in the landscape. Wolves were common in Saxon and early medieval England, but were in decline by the 12th century due to deforestation and hunting. By the time Gervase was writing in the early 1200s, wolves were becoming rare in southern England, but were still present in the more remote regions of the north, particularly in Yorkshire, Cumbria, and the Scottish borders. Wolves were seen as a threat to livestock and travellers, and hunting them was encouraged, with some Norman and medieval rulers offering bounties for their extermination. So at the time this was written, we can surmise that medieval people knew what real wolves looked like. Wolves were a known animal, so a sighting of something bigger, standing upright, or acting with intelligence would have stood out. In some cases, large wolves seen in strange conditions could well have influenced stories. However, wolves generally avoid humans, so reports of a stalking, intelligent, upright figure don't match normal wolf behavior.
Flixton werewolf is one of the oldest recorded werewolf cases in England, with reports said to stretch back over 1,000 years. Unlike the werewolves of later fiction, tied to the full moon or a cursed transformation, the creature in Flixton was spoken of as something that simply existed. A predator, always lurking in the landscape, neither man nor wolf, but something in between. The earliest known references to this creature date back to the 10th century, during a period when wolves still roamed in England but were increasingly rare. This was also a time of violent conflict, with Viking raids and political upheaval shaping the country. And it's in this setting that something unnatural was said to prowl the countryside near Flixton in North Yorkshire. One of the most persistent parts of the legend is the claim that a refuge was built in Flixton to protect travellers from attacks. This structure is believed to have been a stone-built refuge or shelter, constructed to allow those travelling through the region a safe place to rest overnight. This is said to have been located at Spittal Corner, which is likely somewhere in this area here, which is actually in modern-day Staxton. We took a road trip, and Flixton was one of the stops along the way. This footage is from the 1st of February 2025, which we mistimed, really, since January was actually known as Wolf Month in the Saxon Times, due to the increase in attacks and ferocity in wolves in the area, desperate for increasingly scarce food. You can see how this landscape would have offered very little in the way of protection for travellers and livestock. Thankfully, these sheep seemed quite at ease hanging out here. Especially this one, who was very interested in what we were doing. And during this time, there is little foliage too, which also means there's not a lot of cover for a predator. The place is picturesque, yet hauntingly barren. If you fancy going to have a look for yourselves, then here's the map and the postcode of the Foxhound Inn for your sat-nav. And here's the route to take to get to where this footage was filmed. I'd walk it though, don't try to drive down there. One thing I will caution you on is that if you intend to do the same route we did, and that'll become apparent through the video, then take some sandwiches, or make sure you eat at the Foxhound Inn, because every other place that looked like you might be able to have lunch was completely boarded up, or closed, or up for sale or lease. Some versions of the legend claim that the werewolf refuge was built specifically to protect against a man-wolf that stalked the roads. However, no surviving medieval records confirm that it was intended as a werewolf defense. It may, of course, have been a defense against actual, normal wolves, and is often referred to as a hostel. An article on the Whole Life website from May of 2021, which discusses the wider anomaly of the so-called Walled Triangle, mentions that the site of this hostel was near Staxton Hill, called Spittal Home. Now, whenever I get a signal of a possible real-world connection to these encounters, I always want to find out as much as I can about them. Initially, I looked up a geophysical survey of the area that seemed most likely to have been where this hostel might have been, and this was undertaken by Archaeological Surveys YWAS in August of 2005. The main beats of the report and its description of the site's background for us are: the site is believed to be on the location of a medieval hospital of St. Mary, which was associated with Bridlington Priory. This suggests that some form of shelter or refuge was present in the medieval period, though its exact purpose isn't clear. The survey identified banks and ditches and trackways which could have been used for fortification or boundary marks. Some of these features appear aligned with medieval roadways, which fits the narrative of a refuge that was built for travellers. Resistance surveys and magnetometer scans did not locate substantial stone buildings that would confirm a large, dedicated refuge. However, they did detect anomalies indicative of buried ditches, enclosures, and pits, which could suggest a temporary or wooden structure once stood there. Human remains were also found just south of the A64 and near the farm. English heritage suggests that one of the earthworks could have been an ancient road or approach to the hospital. If If this is correct, then the refuge, apparently built in AD 940, may have simply been a way station for travellers later incorporated into the werewolf legend. We went to have a look around the area of this site just a short way down the road from Flixton. Please excuse this blurry footage. I forgot to put autofocus back on the camera. Now, don't do what we did here, because we took the wrong exit from the roundabout. We should have taken the next one, so we had to turn around and come back. We spotted a pub called the Ganton Greyhound, which we thought we might visit later, but that appeared to be shut as well. Now, I used to live in Scarborough, and I worked at a lot of pubs around the area, and I remember that a lot of them used to close until the tourist season, or at least operate on very limited schedules during winter. When we finally reached the correct location, we were disappointed to find that this too seems to be shut down, with a for lease sign in the window. And there's a caravan park next to it, and a sort of grotto with little shops and themed bits and bobs. We wandered around this grotto, which eerily was the only thing open in the place. But there was nobody there working, and nobody else visiting. It felt incredibly weird. You can see from my amateur footage that this area too is hauntingly sparse, and also has a large area of woodland in the distance there. Who knows what might be lurking in that lot? Apparently, this very roundabout has been the scene of some recent sightings of a large, dark figure prowling in the bushes. Here it is on the map with the postcode for you. Definitely there's a building there now, but how about this werewolf refuge of old? In the Congleton and Macclesfield Mercury of April 1890, I found this piece. The history of medieval England absolutely bristles with statutes and records relating to wolves. January was known as Wolf Month, and certain lands in Derbyshire were held on the condition of killing wolves. Putting aside cases which have occurred within comparatively recent years when wolves have been imported from France in place of fox cubs, the brute in his wild state lingered.
Take refuge in Amida Buddha, saying the Buddha's name in profound gratitude for his inconceivable gift of salvation. Nembutsu, saying the Buddha's name, Namo Amida Butsu, is the great practice embodied in Amida Buddha's primal vow, the universal pledge of great compassion which guarantees the salvation of all sentient beings caught in samsara, the vicious cycle of birth, suffering and death. The name is a practical and easy medium by which Amida Buddha transfers his infinite virtues to us, mundane foolish persons, those who sincerely and joyfully entrust ourselves to him, for our birth in the pure land of peace and bliss at the end of this life. When we truly realize our utter inability to free ourselves from samsara by our own efforts, we would single-mindedly accept Amida's gift of salvation. With deep gratitude abiding in our hearts, we spontaneously say the name, whether sitting, standing, walking, lying down, in times of happiness or sadness, irrespective of the environment or circumstance we are in. Thus, we know without any doubt that our safe deliverance to the shore of ultimate freedom is absolutely assured at the end of this miserable existence in mortal flesh. The following poem expresses the unsatisfactory conditions of our wretched existence, in profound contrast to Amida's gift of salvation, which is the one and only means available to us for our escape from samsara in this dharma-ending age. The texture of life appears rough or fine, fashioned by strong karmic threads accumulated from countless time, fleeting and impermanent. Closely examining the fabric, we will definitely see the ugly stained threads of blind passions weaving the net of suffering without cease. Interdependent. Our own wretched existence, despite the persistent hue and cry, are just like dust specks against the vast sky, insignificant. Yet we have already been proffered the unconditioned land of enlightenment. More than 50 billion years ago by Amida's grace and compassion. Inconceivable. The Buddha's primal vow. Call of boundless compassions made to save evil persons like us in our wretched condition. Namo Amida Butsu. His wonderful gift of salvation received by us in this precious human life is the fabric of infinite compassion, assuring our freedom from pain and strife. Namo Amida Butsu. Recognizing that our useless self-power cannot free us from the pain of samsara, we take refuge and gratefully rely on the vow power of Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Butsu. The Buddha's infinite merits and virtues are bestowed equally on all beings. May we accept Amida's gift of Shinji and obtain birth in his land of peace and bliss. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. The first 4 stanzas deeply express the 4 seals of the Buddha Dharma, describing impermanence, anicca. All stained emotions have the nature of suffering, dukkha, emptiness, insignificance of all phenomena, anatta, and the unconditioned land of enlightenment, nibbana, nirvana, is inconceivable. Nirvana is obtained by accepting and relying entirely on Amida's gift of salvation, the primal vow taught in the true Pure Land teaching transmitted directly from Shakyamuni Buddha through the 7 Pure Land tradition teachers to Master Shinran. The 5th verse conveyed to us the unique message regarding Amida Buddha and his fulfilled land, based on the wonderful expositions of Master Shinran, particularly of the saving wretched, evil persons in this dharma-ending age, according to their true nature and capacity, those who realized their total failure and inability to save themselves by self-power. Namo Amida Butsu unconditionally guarantees the salvation of all suffering beings who single-mindedly and steadfastly rely on the primal vow. The working of the vow of great compassion described in the last 3 verses assures our salvation in the present while we are still living out this life as persons filled with evil passions. All mundane, foolish persons will be able to realize this when the good karmic seeds from their distant past ripen. We should know that Amida Buddha, without fail, transfers equally his store of infinite merits and virtues to each and every one of us for our birth in the Pure Land, the moment we entrust ourselves and our karmic destiny entirely to him. Single-heartedly saying the Buddha's name, Namo Amida Butsu, they all who listen deeply to this message fully entrust themselves to the power of Amida Buddha's primal vow. Hear and humbly accept Amida's precious gift of salvation. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida, Butsu, Namo, Amida, Butsu.
So how to get started with Heijin's new movie, Photo Avatar feature. First, go to your dashboard on the left, and under Assets, click Avatars. Slide over to Photo Avatar, and click Create Photo Avatar. From there, you have two options, upload your own image, or generate one directly in Heijin with prompt. Let's hit Upload and choose.
This wonderful passage, beautifully written by Venerable Master Shinran, vividly tells us that our karmic consciousness of Shinji, the entrusting faith in Amida Buddha and the primal vow, is the essential cause for our birth in the land of peace and bliss. Nurtured by listening deeply to the Dharma on Amida Buddha, this karmic consciousness of Shinji naturally arises in us, with the ripening of the seeds of our accumulated good karma from the past. Truly we know that without the virtuous name, our compassionate Father, we would lack the direct cause of birth. Without the light, our compassionate Mother, we would stand apart from the indirect cause of birth. Although direct and indirect causes may come together, if the karmic consciousness of Shinjin is lacking, one will reach the land of light. The karmic consciousness of true real Shinjin is the inner cause. The name and the light, our Father and Mother, are the outer cause. When the inner and outer causes are united, one realizes the true body in the fulfilled land. Suffering beings like ourselves do not know why we are born here, in a fleeting environment firmly attached to greed, hatred, ignorance, arrogance and doubt, living perhaps for only a short period of 100 years, then blindly leaving this world in agony for another unknown existence of continued pain and suffering. How painfully foolish and blind we are, not making use of this extremely rare human birth, which has brought us the right condition to free ourselves from samsara, this vicious cycle of repeating birth, old age, sickness, suffering, and death. Master Shinran's deep self-reflection and personal experience of the inconceivable gift of entrusted faith, Shinjin, in Amida Buddha's primal vow are truly heartfelt and marvelous. Thus, they are wonderfully expressed through these large treasury of beautiful and direct expositions, written in profound gratitude to Amida Buddha for his great compassion and grace that has saved him from samsara, the ocean of suffering. Knowing that the karmic consciousness of Shinjin is the inner cause required for our birth in Amida's pure land, Master Shinran tells us that it arises through listening deeply to the Buddha Dharma in general and to the pristine Amida Dharma in particular, as taught in the larger Sutra of Infinite Life. With the ripening of the positive karmic energy carried forward from our past lives, these repeated exposures to the Dharma would, at some point, suddenly cause us to fully awaken to the boundless compassion of Amida. Comparing this with what Shakyamuni Buddha had spoken about our extremely rare human birth and the necessary causes, fertile father, fertile mother, and the appropriate karmic consciousness of being, which must be present and interdependently fused together for birth to take place in this human realm. However, we should clearly be aware of the vast, incomparable difference between the two distinct categories of karmic consciousnesses that would certainly lead beings to the two different types of births. The impure karmic consciousness of a sentient being, would certainly lead them into its parents inside the desire realms of samsara, according to the karmic energy it possesses at the point of death. That being will, without fail, they naturally alter the appropriate location and take birth in one of the unenlightened, defiled realms of perpetual suffering in samsara, as a god, to be god, human being, hungry ghost, animal or hell being. How painful this is. On the other hand, the pure karmic consciousness of Shinjin, freely given by Amida Buddha and willingly accepted by us, is the decisive cause that will definitely lead us to be born in his enlightened pure land of Nirvana. We would know instantly that our complete freedom from the pain and suffering of samsara is absolutely guaranteed. How joyous this is! The above classical writing in Chinese clearly reveals to us that the good karmic connections with the Buddha Dharma from our past must be present, accumulated, nurtured and ripened to that point when they would spontaneously trigger off this extremely rare karmic consciousness of entrusting faith in Amida Buddha and his primal vow. This is the one thought moment when we are fully awakened to the compassionate presence of Amida Buddha and his primal vow which embodies saying his name. Good karma from the past, accumulated through our immediate exposure to the Buddha Dharma in countless lives, which hitherto stayed unrealized, suddenly ripens in us through listening deeply again to the Amida Dharma in this life. Instantaneously, at that moment, we become aware of the great compassion of Amida Buddha in trying tirelessly to save incorrigible beings like us from the distant past. Thus, we are now able to entrust ourselves fully in Amida Buddha and the power of the primal vow. This wonderful fact has been strongly emphasized in the following verses found in the largest sutra of infinite life. Without a stock of goods from the past, one cannot hear this sutra, but those who had observed the precepts can hear the right Dharma. One who had met a worldly one in the past can accept this teaching. Such a person respectfully worships his, and upholds it, and rejoices so greatly as to dance. Arrogant, corrupt and indolent people find it hard to accept this teaching, but those who have met Buddhas in their past lives rejoice to hear it. A true and real Shinjin of Amida Buddha is his absolute confidence.
如今，印度的处境堪称艰难，仿若置身于炽热的火山之上，被烈火无情炙烤。曾经那副不可一世、大放厥词的模样，如今已成为全世界的笑柄。就在前些日子，印度还叫嚷得极为响亮，气势汹汹地宣称要对巴基斯坦发动攻击，一副志在必得的架势。然而，时至今日，局势却发生了戏剧性的反转。自冲突爆发以来，已经过去了9天、10天之久，印度却始终未能将其威胁付诸行动。如今的印度就像一只被拔了牙的老虎，空有一身威风，却再也无法施展。美国向来以自身利益为重，在印度最需要支持的关键时刻，却选择了袖手旁观，对印度的困境视而不见。以色列自身也深陷麻烦之中，自顾不暇，根本无力向印度伸出援手。反观巴基斯坦，其背后有着坚实的支持力量。土耳其果断派遣军舰和海军舰队前往巴基斯坦，展现出坚定的支持态度。不仅如此，众多国家纷纷表态，站在了巴基斯坦这一边。倘若印度真的执意对巴基斯坦发动战争，那无疑将面临一场毁灭性的打击，国家很可能会因此陷入四分五裂的境地。面对如此严峻的局势，印度总理莫迪为了挽回些许颜面，开始在国内寻找替罪羊。他宣布解除印度空军副总参谋长以及空军副司令的职务，将前线应对巴基斯坦不利的责任一股脑地推到了他们身上。由此可见，印度在这场冲突中已经尽显疲态，看似强硬的外表下， 实则是一颗怯懦、慌乱的心。他虽然一开始叫嚷的凶，但当真正面临战争的压力和国际形势的变化时，却完全没了主意，陷入了进退两难的困境，找不到任何解决问题的有效途径。值得注意的是，此次引发局势的升级背后有着美国的影子。美国总统特朗普在2020年担任总统期间曾前往印度访问，随后印度便在边境地区开始挑衅，加勒万河谷事件就是在这样的背景下发生的。当时特朗普在中印双方爆发冲突之前到访印度，之后莫迪领导下的印度就在中印边境地区肆意妄为，结果遭到了我方的有力回击。印度方面不仅有数十人丧生，还有300多人被我方俘虏。如今历史似乎又在重演，特朗普的某些举动再次引发了印巴之间的紧张局势，而这一次关键时刻，美国却再次抛弃了印度。特朗普明确告知印度，美国无法为其提供帮助，因为当前的国际局势错综复杂，美国自身也面临着诸多挑战，根本无暇顾及印度的事务。在这种内忧外患的情况下，印度媒体试图通过转移公众注意力来缓解国内的压力。此前莫迪曾信誓旦旦地向全世界宣称一定会对巴基斯坦发动攻击，然而如今局势急转直下，印度却传出了一则令人啼笑皆非的消息。印度声称即将制造出全世界最小的芯片，尺寸仅为0.3纳米，甚至还大言不惭地宣称印度芯片将一举超越美国和中国，跃居世界第一。要知道，目前美国在芯片制造领域处于领先地位，也只能生产1纳米的芯片，而印度竟然打算用牛粪来制造芯片。印度方面认为，他们拥有全世界数量最多的牛，也就意味着拥有取之不尽的牛粪。如果能够将牛粪充分利用起来制造芯片，那将是一项具有开创性的伟大成就。然而，这种想法实在是荒谬至极。且不说牛粪根本不具备制造芯片的条件，就连美国都对此嗤之以鼻，嘲笑印度简直是在白日做梦。另外，今天中午传来一则令人痛心的消息：5一劳动节和5四青年节期间，很多人选择外出旅游，其中有不少人前往美国、日本以及东南亚等地。昨天，一个中国旅游团在美国黄石火山公园遭遇了严重车祸。据中国驻旧金山总领事馆今天上午发布的详细信息，该旅行团共有16人，乘坐一辆类似旅游大巴的小型面包车，与一辆美国道奇公羊皮卡车发生了剧烈碰撞。事故发生后，美国司机当场死亡，而旅行团一方情况也极为惨烈，共有7人不幸遇难，其中包括1名意大利籍导游，并有5名中国公民丧生，车上还有8人受重伤。目前相关人员已紧急赶赴现场进行救援和处理，多名重伤员正在全力抢救之中。在此，驻美大使馆特别提醒所有在美国旅游的中国游客，一定要高度注意自身安全，谨慎出行，确保旅行平安。据大使馆通知，一些家属正前往美国，只为带回装有亲人骨灰的盒子。曾经满怀期待赴美，如今却只能无奈面对阴阳两隔的结局，着实令人痛心。在这个5一国际劳动节期间，国内一片祥和，民众尽情享受假期，而西方世界却深陷困境。法国、德国和美国国内抗议游行此起彼伏，尤其是美国，特朗普的反对者们走上街头，声势浩大。据统计，全美已有超过300万人参与了名为50501的抗议活动，他们强烈要求推翻特朗普，甚至希望将其送往精神病院。与此同时，德国也传来令人痛心的消息。当地时间5月2日晚，在斯图加特，一辆汽车突然冲进约有2000多人的人群，疯狂撞击路人。这场悲剧造成了惨重的伤亡，最终导致8人死亡，6人重伤，其中5名儿童不幸遇难。这一系列事件背后，反映出欧洲局势的紧张与混乱。法德两国的民众纷纷要求政府停止参与俄乌战争。俄乌冲突持续至今，美国企图独吞乌克兰的矿产资源，法德意等欧洲国家却一无所获。民众的不满情绪日益高涨，抗议活动正是这种情绪的集中爆发。当前印度的处境堪称艰难，仿若置身于炽热的火山之上， 被烈火无情炙烤。曾经那副不可一世、大放厥词的模样，如今已成为全世界的笑柄。就在前些日子，印度还叫嚷得极为响亮，气势汹汹地宣称要对巴基斯坦发动攻击，一副志在必得的架势。然而时至今日，局势却发生了戏剧性的反转。自冲突爆发以来，已经过去了9天，10天之久，印度却始终未能将其威胁付诸行动。如今的印度就像一只被拔了牙的老虎，空有一身威风，却再也无法施展。美国向来以自身利益为重，在印度最需要支持的关键时刻，却选择了袖手旁观，对印度的困境视而不见。以色列自身也深陷麻烦之中，自顾不暇，根本无力向印度伸出援手。反观巴基斯坦，其背后有着坚实的支持力量。土耳其果断派遣军舰和海军舰队前往巴基斯坦，展现出坚定的支持态度。不仅如此，众多国家纷纷表态，站在了巴基斯坦这一边。倘若印度真的执意对巴基斯坦发动战争，那无疑将面临一场毁灭性的打击，国家很可能会因此陷入四分五裂的境地。面对如此严峻的局势，印度总理莫迪为了挽回些许颜面，还是在国内寻找替罪羊。他宣布解除印度空军副总参谋长以及空军副司令的职务，将前线应对巴基斯坦不利的责任一股脑地推到了他们身上。由此可见，印度在这场冲突中已经尽显疲态，看似强硬的外表下，实则是一颗怯懦、慌乱的心。他虽然一开始叫嚷的凶，但当真正面临战争的压力和国际形势的变化时，却完全没了主意，陷入了进退两难的困境，找不到任何解决问题的有效途径。值得注意的是，此次印巴局势的升级背后有着美国的影子。美国总统特朗普在2020年担任总统期间曾前往印度访问，随后印度便在边境地区开始挑衅，加勒万河谷事件就是在这样的背景下发生的。当时特朗普在中印双方爆发冲突之前到访印度，之后莫迪领导下的印度就在中印边境地区肆意妄为，结果遭到了我方的有力回击。印度方面不仅有数十人丧生，还有300多人被我方俘虏。如今历史似乎又在重演，特朗普的某些举动再次引发了印巴之间的紧张局势，而这一次关键时刻，美国却再次抛弃了印度。特朗普明确告知印度，美国无法为其提供帮助，因为当前的国际局势错综复杂，美国自身也面临着诸多挑战，根本无暇顾及印度的事务。在这种内忧外患的情况下，印度媒体试图通过转移公众注意力来缓解国内的压力。此前，莫迪曾信誓旦旦地向全世界宣称，一定会对巴基斯坦发动攻击。然而，如今局势急转直下，印度却传出了一则令人啼笑皆非的消息：印度声称即将制造出全世界最小的芯片，尺寸仅为0.3纳米，甚至还大言不惭地宣称印度芯片将一举超越美国和中国，跃居世界第一。要知道，目前美国在芯片制造领域，5月9日，俄罗斯即将举行胜利日阅兵，相关筹备工作已经就绪。目前，我国已确认将派代表参加此次阅兵。印度方面，莫迪于昨日上午公开拒绝了俄罗斯的邀请，称国内事务繁忙，5一劳动节期间无法出示。在美俄关系方面，普京向特朗普发出了参加阅兵仪式的邀请，但特朗普予以拒绝，并安排国务卿兼国家安全助理库比奥代表美国出席。然而，乌克兰总统泽连斯基却发出警告，声称在5月8日至10日期间，乌克兰将在莫斯科实施恐怖袭击，无法保证任何前往莫斯科的人员安全。这一言论引发轩然大波，就连特朗普都斥责泽连斯基的行为疯狂且危险。俄罗斯总统梅德韦杰夫随即回应称，如果泽连斯基真的在莫斯科搞破坏，乌克兰必将遭受沉重打击。俄罗斯总统普京也在国内会议上明确表示，鉴于美国对乌克兰的援助，俄罗斯的战略方向将做出调整。普京直言，俄罗斯的目标不再仅仅是乌东4个州，而是要将整个乌克兰纳入掌握。毕竟，美国已与泽连斯基签署了矿产协议， 俄罗斯唯有升级战争规模，才能在这场博弈中占据主动。这一表态无疑让泽连斯基陷入了困境。目前，俄罗斯方面已经放出狠话，如果泽连斯基在5月8日至10日期间轻举妄动，俄罗斯将对乌克兰发动全面战争。面对俄罗斯的强硬态度，泽连斯基仍在负隅顽抗。他不仅售卖了乌克兰的稀土矿产等资源，还紧紧抱住美国的大腿，试图继续与俄罗斯对抗。特朗普此前已经表态将向乌克兰提供武器援助，并在签署相关协议后警告普京，如果俄罗斯不停止行动，美国将全面加大对乌克兰的援助力度。事实上，美国已经向乌克兰提供了2批次的援助，第一批就包括5000万美元的炮弹和标枪导弹。在当前复杂的国际局势下，俄乌冲突的发展态势备受瞩目。第2批次援乌的20多架 F-16战斗机已在行程之中。值得注意的是，此次援助并非无偿赠与。特朗普执政期间曾一度冻结对乌克兰的军事援助，而如今随着局势变化，他已下令全面解封，援助工作正式重启。特朗普方面认为，泽连斯基政府已通过售卖乌克兰矿产资源给美国获取了大量资金，既然资金充裕，便应当加大对军事装备的投入。然而，这一局势的发展并未逃过俄罗斯的关注。普京领导下的俄罗斯明确表态，坚决反对泽连斯基将乌克兰矿产资源出售给美国的行为。俄罗斯方面强调，未经其同意，任何对乌克兰境内矿产资源的开采活动都将被视为挑衅行为，一旦发生，俄罗斯将采取果断措施，不排除军事打击的可能性。在此压力之下，泽连斯基政府面临着前所未有的困境。一方面，乌克兰东部4个州的归属问题仍悬而未决，局势紧张；另一方面，乌克兰政府试图通过向美国出售矿产资源来换取军事援助和经济支持。这一做法不仅引发了俄罗斯的强烈反对，也在国际社会引发了广泛争议。泽连斯基近日公开表示，乌克兰宁可将矿产资源出售，甚至赠送给美国，也绝不让俄罗斯染指。这一表态无疑进一步加剧了俄乌之间的矛盾。与此同时，俄罗斯国内也在为即将到来的重大活动进行紧张筹备。为了确保胜利日阅兵仪式的顺利进行，俄罗斯自即日起在全国范围内，特别是首都莫斯科，实施了严格的警戒措施。此次阅兵仪式意义非凡，预计将有来自全球19个国家的元首出席，其中包括中国领导人。俄罗斯总统梅德韦杰夫更是明确向乌克兰方面传达了信息，在阅兵仪式结束后，俄罗斯将对乌克兰展开全面攻势。这一表态无疑给本就紧张的俄乌局势增添了更多不确定性。面对俄罗斯的强硬姿态，泽连斯基政府急忙向美国寻求更多军事援助。然而，特朗普政府在获取了乌克兰的矿产资源后，态度发生了明显转变。虽然美国承诺提供一些武器零部件，但对于乌克兰急需的核心武器装备，美国却表示难以满足。这一情况让泽连斯基政府深感失望，也凸显了乌克兰在国际政治博弈中的艰难处境。从更宏观的国际视角来看，中美之间的关税战也对当前局势产生了深远影响。目前，美国在这场关税战中逐渐显现出疲态，特朗普政府试图通过与中国进行谈判来缓解压力。然而，中国方面表示需要对相关情况进行全面评估，并未立即接受美国的谈判请求。此举引发了特朗普政府的不满，随后宣布对中国实施新一轮制裁措施，进一步加剧了两国之间的紧张关系。此外，印巴局势也在近期出现了新的变化。美国在印巴问题上的态度逐渐模糊，其原本在该地区的影响力也有所减弱。印度方面原本在军事上积极准备对巴基斯坦采取行动，空军、海军和陆军均已进入高度戒备状态，只待莫迪政府一声令下。然而，关键时刻莫迪却选择了谨慎行事，决定暂时放缓军事行动的步伐。这一决策背后，既有来自国际社会的压力，也有对自身实力和局势的综合考量。与此同时，土耳其的介入让印巴局势变得更加复杂。 土耳其总统埃尔多安宣布派遣海军编队前往印度洋，其目标直指印度。土耳其方面明确表示，将与巴基斯坦海军举行联合军事演习，这一举动无疑是对印度的直接威慑。面对土耳其和巴基斯坦的联合行动，印度陷入了两难境地。若选择军事对抗，将面临来自两个方向的压力；若选择退缩，则可能在国际舞台上颜面尽失。在这种情况下，印度迫切需要一个体面的台阶来缓解当前的紧张局势。然而，国际形势复杂多变，这样的机会并不容易出现。5月9日，俄罗斯即将举行胜利日阅兵，相关筹备工作已经就绪。目前，我国已确认将派代表参加此次阅兵。印度方面，莫迪于昨日上午公开拒绝了俄罗斯的邀请，称国内事务繁忙，5一劳动节期间无法抽身。在美俄关系方面，普京向特朗普发出了参加阅兵仪式的邀请，但特朗普予以拒绝，并安排国务卿兼国家安全助理卢比奥代表美国出席。然而，乌克兰总统泽连斯基却发出警告，声称在5月8日至10日期间，乌克兰将在莫斯科实施恐怖袭击，无法保证任何前往莫斯科的人员安全。这一言论引发轩然大波，就连特朗普都指责泽连斯基的行为疯狂且危险。俄罗斯总统梅德韦杰夫随即回应称，如果泽连斯基真的在莫斯科搞破坏，乌克兰必将遭受沉重打击。俄罗斯